Oh, hello. Today we're going to be learning about ancient Rome. The founding of Rome goes back to the very early days of civilization. It is so old, today it is known as the Eternal City. The Romans believed that their city was founded in the year 753 BC. Modern historians, though, believe it was probably the year 625 BC. Early Rome was governed by kings, but after only 7 of them had ruled, the Romans took power over their own city and ruled themselves. They then instead had a council known as the Senate, which ruled over them. From this point on, one speaks of the Roman Republic. The word republic itself comes from the Latin, which is the language the Romans spoke, you see. It's the words res publica, which means public matters or matters of state. The Senate under the kings had only been there to advise the king. Now the Senate appointed a consul who ruled Rome like a king, but only for a year. This was a wise idea, as like that, the consul ruled carefully, and not as a tyrant, for he knew that otherwise he could be punished by the next consul once his year was up. Rome knew only 4 classes of people. This division was very important to the Romans. The lowest class were the slaves. They were owned by other people. They had no rights at all. The next class were the plebeians. They were free people, but they had little say at all. The second highest class were the equestrians. Sometimes they're called the knights. Their name means riders, as they were given a horse to ride if they were called to fight for Rome. To be an equestrian, you had to be very wealthy. The highest class were the nobles of Rome. They were called patricians. All the real power in Rome lay with them. The Roman Republic was a very successful government. It lasted from 510 BC until 23 BC, almost 500 years, in comparison to the United States of America, which has only existed since 1776, which is less than 250. The greatest challenge the Roman Republic faced was that of the Carthaginians. Carthage was a very powerful city in North Africa, which, much like Rome, controlled its own empire. The fight between the two sides was a long one, and it took place on land and sea. The most famous incident came when the great Carthaginian general Hannibal crossed the mountain chain of the Alps to the north of Italy with all of his troops, including his war elephants, and invaded Italy. Though Rome in the end won and Carthage was completely destroyed in the year 146 BC. Rome's most famous citizen was no doubt Julius Caesar. He was a Roman politician and general who, without having any orders to do so, conquered the vast territory of the Gauls to the north of his province in France. In the year 49 BC, Caesar crossed the small river between his province and Italy, called the river Rubicon, and conquered Rome itself, and then he ruled as dictator. His military campaigns also took him to Egypt, where he met the famous Cleopatra. He lived life, his life was ended as he was infamously murdered in the Senate.
Let's see, it was in the Senate. Okay, Rome did grow after that point, all the way up until the time through Claudius, who conquered Britain, on into Trajan's time, who was a great conqueror, where Rome saw its heyday and largest expansion. Until, in 285, we have the splitting of Rome under Diocletian. And from that point, we really kind of go downhill. But we digress, and we will let the book pick up from where we left off.